Wings of the Shekhinah, the sculptural art of Herman Wald, opened at the South African Jewish Museum in Cape Town in February. And the man behind it all is his son, Louis Wald, who is with me in the studio. Louis, it's a journey for you, no doubt, and I'm sure it started many years ago, but it seems like in 2007, after your mother died, you sort of re-looked your legacy, as it were.
That's true to an extent. It actually started a lot earlier. I moved to London from Johannesburg in 1990, and just prior to that, we decided to build a database of my dad's works with the intent of making a catalogue raisonné of his works.
And your dad died when you were 12 years old in 1970?
That's correct.
So it's quite a long period of time for you to have sort of assessed where and what.
Correct. So I spent a lot of time with my mom prior to leaving for London. We emigrated to the UK. I built a database and we collected a lot of details about up to 400 sculptures that my dad had done, including photographs, newspaper articles, writings, etc., etc. If I hadn't done that then, this project wouldn't exist today.
It's always about grabbing back those questions you never asked as a kid, or those questions that's just from a general family perspective. But when you're talking about an art heritage, tell us a little bit about your father's background, and we'll start from there. I think it's a good start.
He was born in 1906 in a town called Kolozsvár in what was then Hungary, but is now Romania. If you follow Champions League football, you'll notice that there's a football team called Cluj. That's the Romanian name. This place kept on swapping ownership between Romania and Hungary.
And his art history comes really through that, and then Berlin and...
Well, he had an amazing start. He was the son of 7 generations of rabbis, the scion of 7 generations of rabbis, so he was steeped in Judaism. Then he rebelled and did sculpture, which was against the second commandment, so there were big issues there. Then he proceeded to have the most incredible art education across Europe. First Budapest, then Vienna, then Berlin, then Paris, then London, all between 1926 and 1937.
When he came to Johannesburg.
That's when he came to Johannesburg. But that's an amazing time to be in Europe. You had Reds battling the Nazis on the street, and you had all these amazing art movements being developed. So
yeah, politically it was a hotbed,
but artistically and politically,
art historically, it was a very major centre of what was happening at that time.
And he also had very important teachers in all those locations. So it was a very good start.
But come to South Africa in 1937, not exactly the time of economic boom, plus bad enough to try and work as an artist, as I say, a painterly artist, but to sculpture in that sort of period must have been one hell of a battle.
It was, and he did struggle financially his entire life, although he made an enormous number of works. If you look at the website, he's done 8 monumental-sized works, plus 400 smaller ones. Plus, there's 300 or 400 newspaper articles on him during his lifetime.
What's amazing to me is actually when you know that the work was that public. For instance, let's speak about the Springboks, the Oppenheimer fountain in Johannesburg, which so many people, if you're from Johannesburg, would know immediately. The huge artwork, sculptural artwork that was installed at the Jewish cemetery, which is a hugely imposing artwork. And yet even in Cape Town, we were so provincial at that stage that I must admit that until just a few years ago when I started doing some research into Jewish artists, the name Herman Wald was not something that I was familiar with. So it must have been quite an uphill battle getting across, never mind provincial divides, but recontextualizing an international framework, because he certainly had that kind of reputation.
And it's always been a source of hurt for the family that this has been the case. And indeed, if you read the material on the exhibition by the curator, Hayden Proud, he highlights this conundrum, the fact that he had, in the public eye, my dad was a serious figure, and yet the art establishment ignored him to the extent that he's not even mentioned in the major books about South African artwork. So this is one of the motivators to this project. When I started to show it off, or try to get people interested in his work in London and elsewhere, people would say, it looks very nice, but why should we care about him if nobody cares about him in South Africa? So I had to come back to South Africa and make something happen. And happily, 2 large things happened. First of all, it's this major exhibition at the Jewish Museum. And secondly, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but 2 large works have been installed at Wits University in the last 3 months in very prominent places. So these are 2 projects that have put my dad's name back on the map in a major way, and it's forcing people to reevaluate his work.
Well, one of the best ways, really, of reevaluating the work is to come along to the Jewish Museum right now. Definitely. And to have a look at that body of work. Now, you've done 1 or 2 walkabouts with Cape Townians. What has the response been? What is your feeling about the reaction to the work?
I think there's an enormous sense of pride and wonderment by many that such a major figure has been completely unnoticed. There's a lot to him. There's many sides to him. There's a Jewish side, but that doesn't represent the major side of him. I've done quite on the website of his work. You can count his works by category, and only about 15% of his works about Jewish subjects. So he's covered many areas, and it's actually quite difficult to go through them all because he covered so many areas that it takes quite a bit of time to address them all. And that's the one challenge of these walkabouts, is to try and do justice to all the things that he's actually involved in.
It is a very comprehensive show. My only argument might be it's even too comprehensive for one to easily take it in. But it's certainly a show worth having a look at, spending time with, and it certainly helps to recontextualize the work within a South African and a broader international context. And you've had some very good people working with you. I see Elizabeth Rankin came in as well, and her interest in South African sculpture in particular. And I don't think it's only in terms of Johannesburg sculptures. I think sculpture has always been sort of on the periphery rather for some odd reason. And I think it's a very important exhibition to go along to have a look at, and have a look at some of the reflections it does have on some of the various movements in Europe at the time, what was happening in South Africa at the time, and get an overview of Herman Wald's work, which is on at the South African Jewish Museum. The title of the exhibition is Wings of the Shekhinah, or the Wings of the Angel, and if you go along you'll know exactly why it has that title. It's the sculptural art of Herman Wald, South African Jewish Museum, and it's on, I see, until the middle of July.